The day I found out I didn't own my own house anymore was a Tuesday. I remember because it was garbage day, and I had just dragged the big green bin back up the driveway, stopping twice to catch my breath. I'm 72. The Florida sun doesn't care that I drink my water and mind my blood pressure. When it hits, it hits. I was halfway up the driveway when the mail truck pulled up. Our mailman, Keith, leaned out the window. "Morning, Ms. Linda," he called. "Got something from the county for you. Looks important." He handed me a thick, official-looking envelope with the county seal stamped on the corner. I tucked it under my arm, smiled, and made some joke about hoping it wasn't my car tax going up again. We laughed, and he drove off. By the time I made it inside and turned on the ceiling fan, my t-shirt was sticking to my back. I put the mail on the kitchen table like I always do, made myself a glass of iced tea, and sat down. The house was quiet. It had been too quiet ever since my husband Walter died 4 years earlier. We bought this little ranch house in Clearwater in 1983, when avocado green appliances were still considered stylish. We painted the walls ourselves, chose the oak cabinets, planted that stubborn lemon tree out back that finally started producing fruit the year he died, like it was mocking me. I opened the envelope from the county, expecting some boring tax notice. The heading on the first page made the glass of iced tea sweat right out of my hand. Notice of change in property ownership. Homestead exemption adjustment. I blinked and read it again. My eyes slid down to the part that listed the prior owner and the new owner. Prior owner, Linda Harris. New owner, Harris Family Holdings, LLC. An LLC, I don't own a company. I never even finished community college. I spent 35 years as a receptionist at a dentist's office and another 5 as a Walmart greeter. I own a sewing machine, a slow cooker, and a drawer full of expired coupons, not an LLC. At the bottom was a polite little paragraph. If you believe this information is in error, please contact the county property appraiser's office. The room felt suddenly too small. I put the paper down, stood up, then sat right back down because my knees weren't cooperating. Harris Family Holdings. There was only one person in this world who would ever put Harris on a company. My son, Eric. If you'd asked me 5 years ago about Eric, I would have said, "That boy is my heart walking around outside my body." He was our miracle baby, the one the doctors said we'd never have. I worked extra shifts to help him afford college. Walter took side jobs fixing air conditioners. We skipped vacations, never bought a new car, and packed peanut butter sandwiches for work instead of eating out. When he graduated with his business degree, we threw a barbecue so big the neighbors still talk about it. I thought all those sacrifices were worth it when I saw him in his cap and gown. He married Jessica 3 years after that. Shiny hair, sharp smile, big career dreams. She worked in marketing and liked to post everything on Instagram. Every latte, every sunset, every moment. When they hit hard times during COVID, layoffs, debts, the rent climbing higher than they could manage, it was me they came to. "Mom, we just need a little help getting back on our feet," Eric had said, holding my hand across this same kitchen table. "We'll pay you back as soon as we can." I heard my own mother's voice in my head, the way she used to say, "You don't lend money to your children, you give it." So I did. I helped with their rent, with their car payments. I let them stay with me for 6 months while their apartment got fumigated. I bought them a new mattress when their old one sagged in the middle. When Walter died, and I was left with the house, a modest life insurance payout, and my Social Security, it felt natural to help my son first. That's what mothers do, right? So when he said, about a year ago, "Mom, we should look into refinancing your house to get you a better rate," it didn't sound crazy. "The interest rate you got in the 80s is terrible compared to what's out there now," he said, scrolling on his phone at the table. "I've been reading about this. We can save you a lot of money, lower your monthly costs, gives you more comfort." It made sense. My property taxes had crept up. Insurance in Florida is ridiculous. Every time a hurricane was mentioned, my premiums jumped like a scared cat. "We'll handle everything," Jessica said with that glossy, reassuring smile. "We'll talk to the bank, the title company, You just have to sign a few papers. You know you can trust us." Of course I signed. The loan officer came to the house with a stack of documents thicker than the church hymnal. Eric stood over my shoulder, pointing. I cried for my arm. I cried for my husband. I cried because the boy I had carried on my back across subway platforms was now the man who used hunger as a weapon against me. When there were no tears left, I wiped my face with the hem of my apron and did what I always do when I don't know what to do. I cleaned. I wiped down the salt shakers with my good hand. I straightened the chairs. I stacked the menus. In the office, on the top shelf of the metal filing cabinet, behind a box of old receipts, there was a thin, worn folder with my name on it. Luis had put it there years ago. "Rosa," he'd said, "if anything ever happens to me, you open this. Everything you need to know is here." That night, I opened it. Inside, there was the deed to the building. My name alone, not mine and Luis's, just mine. A yellowed letter from the bank, the original business license, and a card with a name and number written neatly in my husband's careful handwriting. Thomas Reed, attorney, it said. I had never met this man, but Luis had. There was a note at the bottom, one more line in his familiar script. "He's a good man. He helped us once. If you ever feel cornered, call him." I sat there at the desk, the cheap fluorescent light buzzing overhead, the restaurant silent around me, and wondered what cornered meant. Was this it? My finger trembled as I dialed. "Reed and Associates, this is Hannah. How may I help you?" The voice on the other end sounded young, crisp, efficient. "My name is Rosa Alvarez," I said. My accent thickened when I was nervous. "My husband, Luis, he told me to call this number if you ever felt cornered?" A new voice cut in, deeper, older, with a hint of a smile. My breath caught. "Yes. Mrs. Alvarez," he said. "I've been expecting this call for about 15 years. I laughed then, a short, broken sound that surprised both of us. We talked for an hour. I told him everything. About Luis, about the restaurant, about the loans I didn't remember signing, about the fall, about the checked box that said accident, when we both knew it wasn't. I told him about my son. I told him I loved him and was afraid of him at the same time, and saying those words out loud felt like confessing a sin. Thomas Reed listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a soft tapping sound on the other end of the line, like someone drumming their fingers on a desk. "Mrs. Alvarez," he said at last, "do you know whose name is on the deed to your building?" "Yes," I whispered. "Mine." "Do you know whose name is on the LLC documents for the restaurant license?" "Mine." "Do you know whose name is on the loan documents your son took out?" I hesitated. He said, "We." He said, "Us." "His," Thomas said. "Just his." I checked. He tried to use the restaurant as collateral, but the bank flagged it because he doesn't own it. That's why he's so desperate for you to sign those sale papers. Without your signature, nothing happens. He has debt with no assets to back it up. The chain can't legally buy what you don't agree to sell. I gripped the phone harder. "So I can say no." "You can," he said. "And you will. But I don't think no is enough anymore, do you?" The ache in my arm pulsed in answer. "What do I do?" I asked. "First," he said, "you eat. I can hear your stomach from here." I laughed again, a little less broken this time. "Second, I'm coming by on Friday night. I want to see your son, and I'm going to bring someone with me." "Who?" "A friend of my daughter," he said. "She has a YouTube channel, food reviews, big audience. Your son likes influencers, doesn't he?" The next day, a young woman with braids and a camera came into the restaurant. "Hi," she said brightly. "I'm Nia. I do a show called Bite of the Block. We look for real, family-owned spots that chains are trying to swallow up." Her eyes, though, were serious when she shook my hand. "Mr. Reed told me everything," she said quietly, while Mateo was in the kitchen yelling about someone being late with a delivery. "I'm going to order like a regular customer, okay? Do your thing. Just be you. And later, when it's time, I'll go live." "Live?" I repeated. "Trust me," she said. If your son is selling this restaurant from under you, we're not going to let him do it in the dark. Which brings us back to that Friday night. The restaurant buzzed like a beehive. Every table was full. There was a line at the door. Someone had spilled something by my corner, and the smell of bleach fought with the smell of grilled peppers. At the bar, Mateo leaned close to the two men in suits. "These guys are from Urban Fork Hospitality," he had told me earlier, puffing out his chest. "They own like 30 places around the city. They're going to turn us into a brand, Ma. This is our big shot." I hadn't answered. Now, I watched as he poured them tequila shots with a flourish. On the right side of the document was the notary block. Personally appeared before me, the undersigned notary, Linda Harris, who produced FLDL number -- my driver's license. I thought of the loan officer's tight bun, her bored eyes, the way Eric had rushed me through page after page. "I don't remember this," I whispered to the empty room. The empty room didn't answer. Eric and Jessica arrived at 6:30, carrying takeout bags from the Italian place he knows I like. Garlic knots, chicken parmesan, salad. The smell made my stomach growl, but I was too knotted up inside to be hungry. "Hey, Mom," Jessica sang out like a TV host walking onto a set. She had that effortless, Instagram-ready polish, perfect hair, casual chic outfit, white sneakers that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Eric had a folder tucked under his arm. I didn't bother with small talk. "Sit," I said, pointing to the kitchen table. Jessica's eyebrows rose a fraction. Eric winced. "Sure thing," he said, setting down the food. "We brought dinner. Thought we could go over." "I already spoke to the county," I cut in. "They sent me the deed." Jessica froze, mid-unwrap of the plastic utensils. Eric pulled out a chair slowly, sat, and opened the folder. "Mom, you're making this a bigger deal than it is," he said. "It's still your home. It's not what it says," I replied, sliding the printed deed across the table. "It says I gave it to your company. It says I don't own it anymore." Jessica leaned over, eyes flicking across the page. "That's just how it looks legally," she started, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "How it looks legally," I repeated. "You mean how it is legally." Eric rubbed the back of his neck. "Look," he said, "the LLC is still us. It's our family. We did this so if something happens, like, say you fall and someone sues or the roof collapses and insurance gets messy, it doesn't wipe you out. We read about this online. Lots of people do it." "Did those people also trick their mothers into signing away their houses without telling them?" I asked. Eric flinched at the word trick. "We didn't trick you," he said. "You signed the papers. You were there. The notary saw you. We didn't force anything." "Did you tell me what I was signing?" I shot back. "Did anyone look me in the eye and say, 'Linda, this paper means that the house you and your husband worked for your whole lives will no longer be yours?'" Silence again. Jessica tapped her nails on the table. "We talked about putting the house in the family name like a year ago," she tried. "You said you trusted us? It's the same thing." "No," I said quietly. "Trusting you to help me refinance is not the same as giving you my home." I thought of Walter, up on that ladder painting the eaves, of the worn spot on the carpet where he used to pace when he was on the phone, of the dent in the pantry door where Eric had thrown a ball inside the house when he was 6, and we both yelled and laughed. "You knew I didn't understand," I said. "And you let me sign anyway." Eric's eyes flashed. "You're acting like we stole your house and kicked you to the curb," he snapped. "You still live here. Nothing has changed. The only thing different is that we can make sure it stays protected and, yeah, maybe use the equity to, plan for the future." "What future?" I asked. "Your future?" He hesitated just a second too long. "We talked to a developer," Jessica said abruptly, her voice gaining speed. "Just to get an idea. This neighborhood is hot right now. They're buying old places, tearing them down, putting in townhomes. They offered a really good price, enough to put a down payment on a bigger house for us, plus a nice assisted living place for you with nurses and activities and people your age." She said people your age like people with your disease. You went to a developer, I repeated, my voice deadly calm, about my house, while I was still living in it. Our house? Eric corrected, then quickly added, legally, I mean. On paper. Mom, it's not like we were going to throw you on the street. We had a plan. You'd have a little studio, all taken care of, no bills, no upkeep. You'd be safe. We'd be 10 minutes away. It's better for everyone. I stared at my son until he shifted in his chair. For 3 years after your father died, I said, I woke up every morning and quietly thanked God that at least I had raised a good man. A man who came by on Sundays, who mowed the lawn, who called when storms hit to check if I was okay. I told every woman in my Bible study group how lucky I was. I swallowed. And now I find out that while you were mowing my lawn, you were also planning to sell it out from under me. That's not fair, he muttered. What's not fair, I said, my voice trembling, is that you used my grief, my age, and my trust to paper over a theft. Jessica opened her mouth, then closed it. Her cheeks were flushed. Mom, Eric said, looking suddenly tired, we're drowning. You know that? Our rent, our loans, everything keeps going up. We're never going to get ahead in this city. This house is just sitting here worth a fortune. You thought I would die soon anyway? I finished for him. So why not cash out early? The words hung in the air like smoke. He didn't deny it. Something inside me that had been soft and pliable for years, decades, hardened. Get out, I said quietly. Eric blinked. What? Get out of my house, I repeated. Or your house, or whatever you want to call it. Just get out. Mom, don't be dramatic, Jessica snapped. Dramatic is what you do on Instagram, I said. This is me drawing a line. I stood up, and my knees didn't even wobble. You've got your keys, I continued. Your car, your own lives. Go live them, but do it without my roof over your head or my name on your accounts. We're not leaving until we sort this out, Eric said stubbornly. Then I'm calling the police, I replied, and I will tell them my son and his wife tricked me into signing away my house. Let's see what they say. The color drained from Jessica's face. Eric, let's go, she muttered, grabbing her purse. He hesitated a second longer, looking at me with something like hurt and anger and fear all mixed together. This is going to blow up on you, he said finally. You don't know what you're doing. I thought of the deed, of the notary, of the county notice addressed to me as prior owner. I didn't know what I was doing a year ago, I said. Now I do. He slammed the door on his way out. The house shook for a second. Then it went still. The next morning, I made an appointment with an elder law attorney. Her name was Rachel Carter, and her office was in a converted bungalow downtown, with mismatched chairs and a bowl of hard candies on the reception desk. Ms. Harris, she said, standing to shake my hand. She was in her early 40s, with curly brown hair pulled into a loose bun and kind eyes that had seen a lot. I'd brought a folder stuffed with papers, the deed, the refinance documents, my bank statements, a list I'd scrawled of every major expense I'd covered for Eric and Jessica over the last few years. I told her everything. I told her about the refinance, the LLC, the developer. Jessica saying, people your age. I told her about the guilt that tugged at me even as I spoke, the little voice that still whispered, he's your son, he's just stressed. Maybe you're overreacting. Rachel listened without interrupting, making notes with a purple pen. When I finished, I sat back, suddenly exhausted. Am I crazy? I asked. Did I mess this up myself? She shook her head. Unfortunately, she said quietly, you are not unique. Elder financial exploitation is one of the fastest growing forms of abuse in this country, and it almost always happens in the family. The word abuse made me flinch. The good news, she continued, is that you came in now, not 3 months from now when the developer had already bought the property and you were standing here with an eviction notice. A shiver ran down my spine at the thought. Can we undo it? I asked. The deed? At the very least, she said. We can challenge it and freeze everything. She laid out the plan like a general mapping a battlefield. Step 1. File a civil action alleging undue influence, lack of informed consent, and fraud in the transfer of the deed. Ask the court for an injunction preventing any sale, mortgage, or transfer while the case was pending. Step 2. Report the situation to Adult Protective Services as potential elder financial exploitation and to the state's Consumer Protection Division. Step 3. Contact the developer and let them know that any deal they thought they had was resting on a contested, possibly criminally tainted deed. Won't that destroy my relationship with my son? I asked, hearing how small the question sounded. Rachel's gaze softened. With all due respect, Ms. Harris, she said, what relationship are we trying to save? The one where he secretly transferred your home, lied about it, and planned to move you out to profit off the sale? I looked down at my hands, folded in my lap, the age spots, the veins, the scars from years of cooking, cleaning, typing. She slid a tissue box closer. It's okay to grieve that, she said, but you can't let that grief cost you your home. By the time I left her office, my head was spinning. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was walking towards something instead of just being led. On my way home, I stopped at the locksmith. New locks, I told him, today. The next week was a whirlwind of papers, signatures, and phone calls. Rachel filed the lawsuit and injunction request. The court granted a temporary order within days. The property could not be sold, mortgaged, or transferred until further notice. Adult Protective Services called to interview me, their questions gentle but pointed. Had anyone threatened me, intimidated me? Did I feel safe? I feel safer now, I told the woman on the phone. And it was true. The developer's representative left 2 voicemails in a row, increasingly irritated. Ms. Harris, we were under the impression your son had authority to negotiate on behalf of the property, a clipped voice said. Obviously, we will be suspending any further discussions until this is clarified. Good, I thought. Then came the text messages. From Eric. Greater than mom. What did you do? Lawyer? Injunction? Are you kidding me? You're making us look like criminals. From Jessica. This is completely blown out of proportion. We were trying to help you. Do you have any idea what this does to us financially? I didn't reply. I made myself grilled cheese and tomato soup and ate it in front of the TV like a normal person enjoying her own life. 2 days later, Rachel called with a question that caught me off guard. Ms. Harris, how do you feel about publicity? Publicity? I echoed. There's a local news station that does a consumer segment, she explained. They cover scams, fraud, that sort of thing. I've worked with their reporter before on elder abuse cases. Your situation is a textbook example. Shining a light on it puts pressure on your son to resolve this quickly, and it helps others in your position. The idea of my shame being aired on television made my stomach flip. But then I thought of all the others, women in my Bible group, the quiet man down the street whose son handled all his finances now, the delicate lady at the pharmacy whose daughter always snatched the receipts. If it helps someone else, I said slowly, I'll do it. That's what I thought you'd say, she replied. The reporter's name was Dana. She arrived at my house with a cameraman and a soft, practiced voice that made it easy to talk. We sat in my living room, me on Walter's old recliner, her on the edge of the sofa. The cameraman framed the shot so you could see the family pictures on the wall behind me. Eric at 10 with missing front teeth, Eric at 18 in his graduation gown, Eric and Jessica at their engagement party in my backyard. Dana asked me to tell the story from the beginning. I did. How we bought the house, how Walter and I scrimped and saved, how I'd helped Eric through college, how he'd come to me with the refinance idea, the papers, the deed, the developer. How did it feel when you realized your son had put your house in an LLC without telling you? She asked. I swallowed hard. Like the floor disappeared under me, I said, like I'd been walking on something solid all my life and suddenly realized it was ice. The cameraman zoomed in slightly. I tried not to think about my wrinkles in high definition. If you could say something to other seniors watching this, Dana said, what would you tell them? I looked straight into the camera. Don't sign anything you don't understand, I said. Not for your kids, not for your grandkids, not for anybody. Love doesn't need a signature on a deed, and if someone is making you feel guilty for protecting yourself, that's not love. When they left, my house felt strangely bigger, like I'd expanded into spaces I'd been shrinking out of. That night, the story aired at 6 o'clock. They called it, Son Puts Mom's Home in Company Name, Elder Financial Abuse or Family Dispute. They showed me speaking, my voice a little shaky but strong. They showed Rachel explaining the legal side. They showed a graphic of a house with a big LLC stamped on it. They also showed a blurred clip of a man, Eric, walking out of an office building saying, "No comment," as the reporter asked, "Did you trick your mother into signing away her home?" My phone rang 3 times that night from blocked numbers. I let them go to voicemail. The next day, 2 ladies at the grocery store recognized me. "You're the brave one from TV," one of them said. "Good for you. My daughter tried something similar with my car title. Never again." Brave. I didn't feel brave, but the word settled somewhere warm inside me.
The court hearing for the injunction was held 2 weeks later. Rachel and I sat at one side of the small courtroom. Eric and Jessica sat at the other, next to a lawyer in an expensive suit who looked annoyed to even be there. Eric wouldn't meet my eyes. The judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense tone, listened to both sides. Eric's lawyer argued this was a family estate planning matter gone sour, that I had signed willingly, that the LLC was set up to protect her assets. Rachel presented copies of the deed, the refinance documents, and the emails between Eric and the developer, discussing sale prices and timelines that never mentioned me. She pointed out my age, my lack of independent legal counsel, the speed at which the deed had been recorded, the fact that I'd continued paying the property taxes and insurance from my own account, under the illusion that I still owned the house. When it was my turn to speak, my palms were sweaty, but my voice stayed steady. "I thought we were refinancing," I said. "I thought my son was helping me. I never would have signed if I'd known I was giving him my home." The judge looked at me for a long moment. "Mr. Harris," she said, turning to my son, "did you clearly explain to your mother that she was transferring full ownership of her property to an LLC you controlled?" He shifted. I thought she understood the structure," he said. "We talked about it." "Did you advise her to seek her own attorney?" the judge asked. "Well, no," he mumbled. The judge sighed. "I'm going to keep the injunction in place," she said. "I find there is sufficient evidence of confusion and potential undue influence to justify maintaining the status quo while this case is litigated. In plain English, that means no one touches this house until we sort this out." Jessica whispered something furiously in Eric's ear. He clenched his jaw. Rachel squeezed my arm under the table. Outside the courtroom, Eric finally approached me. "Are you happy?" he demanded. "You embarrassed me on TV. You dragged me into court. For what? A piece of property that you can't even maintain by yourself forever." "Not a piece of property," I said quietly. "My home." He threw up his hands. "We were trying to make smart moves," he said. "Everyone leverages assets now. We could have all been better off. Except I would have been in a facility I didn't choose, in a life I didn't choose," I replied. "Paid for with the life your father and I built." His face twisted. "You're going to regret this when you can't get up those steps anymore," he snapped. "Maybe," I said. "But if I fall, at least I'll know it was on my own front porch." He shook his head and walked away, Jessica clicking along beside him on her high heels. I watched them go, feeling a strange mix of sorrow and relief. The lawsuit never went all the way to trial. Elder Protective Services opened an investigation. The state's Consumer Protection Division sent Eric a nice letter with phrases like potential criminal liability and further action may be pursued. Rachel kept the pressure on. After a few months and, I suspect, a few scary bills from his own lawyer, Eric caved. He agreed to sign the house back to me in full, in exchange for me dropping the civil suit and not pushing for criminal charges. "I can't go to jail over this, Mom," he said in Rachel's office, his voice small for the first time in months. "Then maybe don't steal from old ladies," she said dryly, and I had to look down to hide my smile. The new deed, this time, had my name only. Grantor, Harris Family Holdings, LLC. Grantee, Linda Harris. No tricks. No fine print. I read every line. Twice. Then and only then did I sign. When it was done, I handed the pen back to Rachel and exhaled. Eric stood, shoving his hands in his pockets. So that's it, he said. You get your house. I get everyone thinking I'm some kind of monster. You did that yourself, I said softly. I just turned on the lights. He looked at me with something like hatred and something like shame. Don't expect us to be there when you need help, he said. I thought of all the days I'd needed emotional help these last few years, the silent afternoons, the nights when grief pressed on my chest like an elephant and no one called. I'll take my chances, I said. He left without hugging me. Jessica didn't look back. It's been a year since then. I changed my will with Rachel's help. The house will go into a trust when I die, not to Eric and Jessica, but to a nonprofit that provides emergency housing to women escaping domestic violence. My savings will go partly to my church, partly to a college fund for my friend Maria's granddaughter, who actually visits me and brings me tamales on Christmas. Adult Protective Services closed my case with a note, client now safe and self-protective. I like that word. Self-protective. I joined a senior center in town. I take a pottery class on Thursdays and a line dancing class on Tuesdays. I made 3 new friends who all have children, and every one of us could fill a book with stories of ingratitude, entitlement, and love twisted into guilt. We laugh about it now. Sometimes we cry. Mostly we dance. My house feels lighter. I had the kitchen painted a soft yellow. I took down some of the old pictures of Eric and put up photos from my pottery class instead. Not because I stopped loving him, God help me, I don't think a mother ever really stops, but because I needed to see my own life on my walls, not just my sacrifices. The lemon tree out back gave me more fruit than ever this year. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I sit on the porch with a glass of iced tea and listen to the cicadas. The deed, with my name printed clearly as owner, sits in a fireproof box in the hall closet. Just knowing it's there makes my shoulders relax. Eric hasn't been by in months. He sent a text on my last birthday. Happy birthday. Hope you're well. I stared at it for a long time and finally typed back. Thank you. I am well. I hope someday you learn that people matter more than property deeds. I don't know if we'll ever fix what he broke. That's a longer story than any court case. But I know this. When I turn the key in my front door at night, it clicks for me and me alone. When I walk from my bedroom to my kitchen in the dark, I can do it with my eyes closed, because every squeaky floorboard, every drafty window, every familiar shadow still belongs to me. My name is Linda Harris. I am 72 years old. I almost lost my house to my own son. But I didn't. And if you're listening to this and something in your chest feels tight because somebody in your life is waving papers and saying, just trust me, I want you to hear me clear. You can love your family and still say no. You can be generous and still protect yourself. You can be old and still own your life and your home. I learned it the hard way. You don't have to.